I request all the speakers and moderator to kindly please come to the stage. Ms. Sinha, now I request you to kindly please conduct the proceedings of the session.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here at the World Sustainable Development Summit 2024. I think it's an event not only India looks to, forward to, but globally people have it on their calendar. So I'm truly delighted and honored to be here today moderating this very important topic around basically women leadership in green, if I could just summarize it. That's what this session is going to be all about. I'm really privileged to be in the company of my eminent co-panelists. We have with us Charlotte, who's the CEO of the Biomass Association. We have Purvi from the Gates Foundation, and we have Shelley and Dipankar from TERI who are here. I'm hoping to get really insightful perspectives covering the broad area of the green economy, and not only here from India, but also Charlotte. We look forward to your global perspectives with respect to what is it that we need to do to engage more women in the area of renewable energy, because all of us know that it's critical and quite incomplete without the engagement of women. So I think with that, what I will do is I will make some comments to set the context, and I believe our session is going to end now at 12. And what I'd like is that we do have some audiences here, hopefully more as we start speaking, but please be ready with Q&A, because we're going to try our best to close by perhaps 11:50 so that we have 10 minutes for question and answers. After setting the context, I'll invite each of the panelists to really, bring in their perspectives around the topic, and we'll keep it a little bit free-flowing, and then maybe perhaps either I can ask a question if we have time, or we will definitely rely on all of you to bring in and advance the discussion. So, when we talk about the green economy, right, it's not only an economy which is, capable of mitigating environmental risks associated with the economy, but, it's really a way for us to be able to focus on human well-being, and I think that is something, sometimes we lose sight of that. I think a green economy is really an outcome of a way of life, whether it is individuals, whether it is corporates, whether it is governments, institutions, at a global level, national level, at the regional level. Dipankar and I were talking about his wife serving in the panchayat. I think that's the most important area where we can have maximum impact, definitely in a country like ours, to be able to engage more women in an effective manner, in a real manner, not tokenism, but really get them engaged and get them to do a lot more. I think sometimes we do get a little bit disillusioned by the statistics and the data we see around us. One of the data I have, according to the United Nations, due to climate change, we all know women are at the receiving end of climate change. And about 80% of those who are displaced are unfortunately women, right? And so, but the question then we want to ask is, that are women empowered? Are women engaged to contribute to the solutions? right? Are they in positions where they can take decisions, come out with policies which can help minimize the impact, not only on themselves, but broadly speaking? So I think that is one area we can do more work on. We've seen that the engagement of women in leadership positions in the private sector, which some of us represent and have spent our careers in, is not as it should be. I think there's about 17 to 20% women in board positions, which is quite critical to set the agenda and the governance of a company. And we have seen, if I could say, at Renew, which is one of India's leading renewable energy company, we have 40% board representation with respect to women on our board. And I can tell you that that makes a huge amount of difference in a company to engage women, to look at the company, the profitability, the performance from a gender lens is, it really is not only the right thing to do, but it's really good for business as well. The other point I wanted to also make is that there are some myths around, women in the renewable energy sector. And I can speak firsthand when I say that women have, or even I guess generally professionals have a view that the renewable energy sector is not welcoming or is not the best landing ground for women as far as jobs are concerned, because it's demanding, you have to spend a lot of your time in the remotest parts of the country, there are safety issues, there are logistics issues, so perhaps it's not the best place to work. But what I want to say is that first of all, we are living in a world where we had 25% women engaged in India's space mission. There's such data and statistics globally where women are at the helm of the toughest sports, jobs, or whatever you want to say. So I don't think that should be an issue. That should not be a bias. I think it's important, of course, to create an enabling environment so that as we bring in new, I would say, systems, processes, people at the workplace, we need to adjust the ecosystem to make that successful, like we do for anything. And just because in the past there have been fewer women, as we bring in more women in different areas, we will have to adjust the ecosystem for that. So having said that, I think the 11% women in the renewable space in India is not something, at least I feel proud of, and we are all working hard to change that. I know TERI is doing a lot, we are trying to do a lot, and everybody else wants to definitely change it, because there are a lot of, the myth is there are a lot of opportunities for women in this space, whether it's R&D, whether it is strategy, law, technology. So there's a huge amount of opportunities, and we want women to come and grab this $50 billion opportunity which is staring at us as we speak, right? We must ensure that it doesn't necessarily go to the other half of the gender. We really must do whatever we can, and all of us together, to change, to make sure that the split is good. I also want to recognize that not everything is negative. We have seen that it's possible to increase the engagement and enrollment of women in this sector. I think in the Nordic region, a huge amount of progress has been made. It's taken them about 20, 25 years. In countries like Rwanda, we have, if I could look at, our own historic legislation with respect to engaging women in the parliament, it's been, historic, and the kind of sentiment change that creates amongst little girls, young women who are at the workplace, when they know somebody is sitting there to think about policies and the legal system, which again we know the laws need to be evaluated with the current crop of young women we have, right? So I think those changes, when they happen, when you have these overarching legislations, is extremely positive. And so in our country over the last decade, I'm sure all of you will agree, I can say that as a woman who spent time growing up in India and a large part of my professional career in India, I see a lot of positive action being taken to bring about a change in the lives, a positive change in the lives of women, whether it is in the rural area through the various yojanas which have come out and been announced by the Prime Minister. And of course, the implementation of that needs to be something we all need to continue working on. But I think it's a good time to be in India. We have, I think, conversations like this around not only in India, but in all important forums around the world. What is it that we must all do to make the sector more gender heavy with the gender which is currently underrepresented? I think we are all aware that a lot of work is being done with respect to even, we are all familiar with the term greenwashing, but I think there is some amount of gender washing, and perhaps it will come out in our conversations. With that, I would like to invite Charlotte to come in, and with your experience in this area, I'd like you to maybe bring out points, as we bring out points like what's going well in the sector, what's not going well with respect to gender, and what is it that we should do to make it better in your area of interest and expertise. Over to you, Charlotte.
Well, thank you. That's a nice narrow set of questions. I'd first like to start by saying that, or recommending that all of you read Invisible Women. I don't know if anybody has read Invisible Women. Wonderful person there. Fantastic. It evidences very clearly the fact that most data does not take into account perspectives or female data. So it's generally neutral data, and it's assumed that data about women is the same as data about men, which leads to completely inappropriate decisions. You've already made the point that women are adversely affected in so many cases by many of these decisions, and if we think about waste management in particular, and we're focused on the 105 billion tons of organic waste that we humans directly or indirectly generate, women are the ones who much more frequently suffer the impacts of that. You've mentioned already that women suffer much more severely from climate change impacts. Similarly, there's more women affected by impacts of the lack of waste management. So all of the decisions that are being made, or the vast majority of decisions that are being made, are not taken with the perspective of women, and actually diversity is obviously a much broader topic. So, but if we look at the statistics, you've referred to some, in renewable energy at senior management level, the IEA's data says that there are less than 14% of women in senior management. So again, that reflects the fact that decisions are being made without the data, the understanding, the perspectives of women, which is leading to the suboptimal decisions being made. So the question is, why is that really happening, and what we can do about it? And some of the analysis that's been done to look at, for example, why there's a lack of women in clean tech, it's a lot of the barriers are around what happens to children at home, and how they are encouraged or not encouraged to think that they can go into any job that they want, and have the freedom to think and confidence to believe they can go into any job that they want. I happened to grow up with a mother who was definitely a leader, and my father very much encouraged me to think that I could do anything I wanted. In fact, he was the only male in our family, so he no doubt felt a little bit underrepresented. There are lots of things that need to happen once you do go into an industry, and one of the things that we are looking to do in the biogas industry, or in the Biogas Association, is look to establish mentorship programs so that women coming into the sector have someone they can talk to, because there are lots of wonderful women in the biogas industry, and it's a great industry, so if women in here, we need a lot more of you. But being able to talk to some of the wonderful women and being able to approach them and say, and talk about some of the things that you've experienced will allow you to give you the confidence to address them and help find ways around them. So the last point I will make, I think, for now, is that we are in a very, very severe climate emergency, which means we every single company, every single business needs to outperform. And all the evidence demonstrates very clearly that the most diverse workforces outperform financially. And everybody can agree that that outperforming financially is a very good thing. So let's work hard to improve those diversity levels, ensure that women get paid the same amount, and that we get steps to ensure that senior management has far greater representation of all kinds of society, and obviously specifically here we're talking about women.
Thanks, Charlotte. Some great points you made around really all of this starts at home, and how young, I think girls and boys both need to get inspired, perhaps by what they see around them, but more importantly, they need to be able to believe that young girls more so, that they can do anything they wish to, and there is encouragement and support, and they come out of schools more confident as they get into the real world. Thank you for bringing that out. I also really believe that's really the most important thing, that we need to raise more confident girls, and everything else will change after that. Purvi, I'd like to bring you in with your perspectives, definitely in the area of climate change and how we can get more women to take leadership. Of course, we all agree that it's not as much as we'd like to see.
Thank you very much, Vaishali, and really nice to be here. Congratulations again to TERI for yet another annual event to look forward to. Thank you. I think I'm going to build on what Vaishali, you said in your remarks, and Charlotte, you said in your remarks about how women get more affected by the impact and implications of climate change. I might make that a little more drastic and to say the impact and implication of climate change is sexist. It affects women much more. And agriculture is actually a very, very important example of that. If one looks at predominantly rain-fed agriculture system, and one looks at majority of the world's farming, which happens in developing country, if one looks at this country, India, over 45% of India's crop production is done by women. And in some sectors, for example, livestock, over 70% of India's livestock production is done by women, without often getting recognized as farmers, because when you think of a word kisan, or when you think of a word farmer in general sense, you think of a man's face, you know, and the women's contribution in agriculture has been very, very significant. But then there are lots of evidences where women-led farms are less productive. FAO's data, for example, there are a number of data, but if one quotes, say, for example, FAO's data, it says if a woman farms and a man farms that same type of farm, the productivity of that farm when a woman farms is less by about 20%. And the reasons are many. One is, for example, lack of mechanization. We, till about 2014, less than 3% of India's farm mechanization had reached women-led farms. So mechanization is one reason why the productivity and the output from the farm, when a woman does it, would be less, right? Access to good technologies, access to inputs, access to knowledge, extension services. These were many, many factors why the productivity for a woman in her farm was coming down, right? And similarly, and very importantly also, the price realization of her farm produce. When a woman went to a market, unlike the women who were part of more large cooperative movements like the Amul movement or the self-help groups or the farmer producer organizations and so forth, when a woman took her produce to a market, the non-aggregated smallholder woman farmer is what I am talking about. The produce fetched much less market price than when a man took it. And it was also because of lack of agency, it was also because of lack of that market competitiveness and so forth. So there was always a disadvantage, right? And the impact of climate and the smallholder farmer men and women's dependency on natural resources, dependency because of rain-fed agriculture and so forth, their dependency and impact and vulnerability due to the climate factor has accelerated because of climate change. So that's something that's very, very important to really realize. But one thing I would like institute like TERI to take up, and I think it's an under-researched area, is this whole area of women's contribution to sustainable farming. I think we need much more data, because when a woman farms, the farming probably can be more sustainable because of various reasons, such as the resource, we know that the resource circulation or resource optimization is better when a woman farms it. The reinvestment into the sector is higher, and we have evidences from livestock that when there is an additional income from the farm, a woman-led farm, they reinvest into that animal's health much more in terms of sort of reinvesting the return on investment. So, you know, sustainability factor, and also a woman-led farm is often much more diversified in terms of various commodities, which becomes, you know, from an agronomic perspective, a much more effective climate adaptation and climate resilience mechanism. So there are these factors. But at the end, I also want to say that we constantly talk about, you know, climate being an equity issue and women having more vulnerability towards that. But I think forums like this, let's also remind that, you know, climate may be an equity issue, but finding the solutions to climate change problems, let's not make that, and let's involve much more women, not just in policy making. I think we are doing quite better. Our understanding of that whole area is evolving, Vaishali, as you said, women's membership into the boards and all that. I think we are doing quite all right. I mean, progressing quite well in terms of policy making forums where, you know, 67 countries around the world have DEI strategies now, which assures that, you know, committees of the government, for example, must have women in it and things like that. So we are kind of evolving there. But policy implementation is something we often don't think about, and women's role in not just in policy making, but policy implementation at district level, at panchayat level, at you know, at taking these policy and implementing. I think that's again an area which needs, there are gaps that needs to be bridged. So yeah.
Some great points made by you. I do agree that implementation is key, and we've done well with respect to realizing that you know, we need more women. Perhaps we have a lot of policies, sometimes really great policies, which we list. I think if we sort of do some research and gather all the policies, especially in India, quite a few of them with respect to just engaging women, even at the panchayat level. But how fairly are they being implemented is something we must also focus on. And with that, Dipankar, if I could bring you in, I think your area of interest is also agriculture, and we've had Purvi set some context and, you know, provide a lot of insights. Perhaps what you could talk a little bit more about is the how of it, right? How is it that we can do more? I know you're doing a lot of work in the eastern part of the country. Perhaps if you could talk about maybe a case study which throws light on what has worked and why it has worked on the ground, because I think that's important for us to do, to replicate in other parts as well.
Thank you so much, Vishali. I am very happy today, see the percentage, I'm 20% in this panel. So it's the kind of thing that, it is rare to see this kind of panel with one male and, rest in a women leadership, panel. So thank you so much for this, to Shelley actually, for putting me here. I would like to start from my personal experience. I lost my father when I was in class 5, and I have brought up by my mother. So I know the women leadership very well. And then, she was working for women, and in the first form Women Commission, when it started off in India with the Women Commission bill. So that is how I have brought up. I know about the awareness, the capacity building that is all required in the field from the very beginning of my childhood, because that is what I experienced at home. That is how things moved in with me. As I go, being major part of my work in the Northeast, Northeast suffers through various natural calamities. Maybe it could be because of climate change, and floods in Assam is an annual thing. It is not in the national news, but it's an annual thing, and the most affected are the women, as has been told by co-panelist Purvi, that very basic, drinking water, toilets, safe food for the child. Those are issues, and loss of agriculture, total loss of agricultural land. So all these are issues in the field, but still these are challenges everywhere. But still, the women of the Northeast are fighting back. Out of the 7 northeastern states, you will see most of the states where there are women farmers, and they have led examples of many such success stories where government has put in a lot of schemes now through the various departments of the government. So as we have evolved, in different sectors of women in the past 2 decades, or it started long back during the, say from the 70s onwards, a focus on women. We have seen the earlier biogas which came up in the 90s. Biogas thing came up in the 90s, but it did not work well. One of the major cause of this probably unsuccessful, implementation of the program could be because women were not involved from the planning stage. The policy requirement for this is one of the main things that should happen. And along with that, the agriculture part of this is the animal husbandry part. Why a policy when made has to, involve all areas of agriculture, and also the biogas part, which is a separate, issue. But now again, the biogas thing has come up. But this time, the policy is much better off than what was in the 90s when the biogas did not work well due to various reasons. But what we see in the field, the main challenge is we lack of awareness and education. That is one of the major cause of failure. When I go to a village, when you meet people, they are not still aware of basic things. Now things are coming up in providing them the basic amenities still. But with the government schemes coming up, especially in form of the self-help group that are provided a small token amount of money by the government, and how there are many successful stories of agriculture-related self-help groups that have been earning. I had a couple of these short films, but we don't show it here. But there are many success stories of women self-help groups coming out with good income after they have, they share as most of you would be aware of how a self-help group works. But in the field when you work, one of the biggest other challenge is that when I have discussion with my colleagues here in TERI or in the government, when a woman is financially independent, then only she can think of something else. I think this is a very important part. She has to have the access of the capital. And how? How do you make a village woman, have access to capital? Those are the things that are the challenges in the field, and we have to have policies. There are ways of doing it. Maybe you have the farmers FPOs now. That could be a way of providing capital, but access to capital is one of the major challenges. Then access to new technologies, like maybe northeastern region still lacks in the kind of technology that is available in this part of the country, but not there still, or in the hill states, in the northern hill states is still not available. And as we move around, we see that girls that are educated. Yesterday there was a discussion. Girls having degrees of civil engineering or in science, physics, maths, they don't want to be an entrepreneur. They would rather go for a job because they don't find avenues to be an entrepreneur. The access is very less. The access to capital and even the kind of schemes that are there for women, it is more of a token scheme. The husband would take the scheme in name of his wife, and then he'll run the business. It is not the thing that is that the government looks for, but it's happening in small townships, in small villages, where there is no access because the woman is not aware, she is not educated. So I strongly feel education is reaching out, no doubt about it, but quality education, quality training, how skill set of the women can be developed. And as we should not forget that half of our population in India is women. And strategically, they are more, they are skilled. They have their own perspective. They have their insights. So how to make use of this? As we empower, women to the leadership position, it's not about, meeting the gender disparity. It's about, the inclusiveness that we want to bring around. More ecologically responsible society that we want to build. As we move forward, I think it is a challenge that which I have just told about, identifying the catalyst, sharing better data, encouraging collective, women working together, access to, capital finance. And there are three more things for being a successful entrepreneur. I think the way we should recognize the importance of access to resource and market and credit, then let's them reject the unrealistic expectation from women as caregivers.
True.
Yeah. And also, let's provide more opportunities to women.
Yeah.
It is there, but how to make them react? Government are providing a lot of schemes. There are no dearth of schemes now, but to make available to the women is very important. So with this I end, but there are a lot of challenges that are still there, but there is a lot of optimism also. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dipankar. Thank you. You made some great points. Everybody agrees. I think, just you spot on. We need more confidence in women, I think. Despite STEM education, they don't have the confidence. But then confidence is also triggered by, basic inputs. So if there is capital going to men, right? And if you're sitting in an environment where a VC or a private equity provider or any other provider is asking you difficult questions, and it's quite obvious it's because you are a woman and their biases, it is rather sort of discouraging for women to be there. And I'm a part of some groups, and I hear the frustration amongst young women who want to take that path, but so capital is key. we all agree, you agreed, and thank you for making that point, that the 20s are better than the 90s as far as the mass gas policy, is concerned. So we're doing stuff, and I always like to recognize, and for all the young women sitting here in the audience, and more importantly, the young men. I don't see many young men. I wish there were more in the audience. But it's for you to also realize and support, because I have seen that when men support, right, more than half of the battle will be solved, right? So it's a plea to all the young men. And we've also seen, as you mentioned, that when you have fathers who have daughters, and I've heard this a lot in my discussions, the way they encourage women at the workplace is significantly, more than if it's not the case. We've had people state that quite obviously, quite frankly, that they get more sensitized and the problem seems more real when they have young women at home who are facing these issues. I'll come to you, Shelley, very quickly. I know we will have 5 minutes for the audience if you help us to, but over to you. Maybe you can focus on capital, maybe a little bit around, maybe gender budgeting. Do you think that's important? And I also want to thank you for, really curating this session quite well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sinha. So, firstly, I think it's quite encouraging that even in India, through the G20 presidency, we see that we are not talking about just women's development, but women-led development. And you mentioned the policy innovation of gender budgeting, and largely like gender budgeting, which is Statement 13 of the Union Budget, which was just very recently tabled. It does focus a little bit more on the side of women's development rather than women-led development. Just to give you an example, there is a scheme called Mahila Kisan, since agriculture sector was discussed here, Mahila Kisan Shashaktikaran Pariyojana, and you see the allocation, that's so minuscule. This is just like to just touch on the budgeting question. But over and above, like when we generally look at interventions, the underlying assumption is that women are like recipients, they are beneficiaries, or they are victims. It's not as if like they are one of the key channelizers of solutions, and perhaps the last mile connectors, to the solutions. I do see Jarnell, or Ripu is that in the audience, and of course he led one of the very successful programs at TERI, was very instrumental to it, called Lighting a Billion Lives, which was about lighting solutions, clean lighting solutions in rural communities in India. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the data, I mean, this is empirical evidence that came to the end of the program, is that women showed larger propensity to sustain, their clean energy enterprises, and they were the ones who actually the women-led enterprises were the ones that kind of had a higher ratio of surviving as compared to the male-led. So at least in the clean energy domain, you do have empirical evidence that women as energy entrepreneurs, they are more likely to sustain their enterprises. Of course, they are quite affected by it. They're quite affected by energy poverty, especially in rural areas. A huge chunk of the burden of providing energy needs to rural households does fall on women. So, of course, they have a larger stake in it as well. And, of course, this is, this is a great example. LABL, through its working in many parts of India, has that empirical evidence, and it clearly points to the fact that, women should definitely not be seen as just mere recipients, but as active contributors to solutions. Also coming to like the larger picture, I just feel that when we talk about women-led development, or when we talk about issues like, women diversity, that was also touched on upon by my previous panelists, I feel like, it's not as if like women are better, but of course they have that diverse perspective. So I do think diversity needs to be, encouraged, and policies need to be in place so that diversity is encouraged. And of course, at the grassroots level or at any levels, mentoring is very important, that you have mentioned. So I do think that's something that is also a very key factor to women-led development. But I think I'll just stop here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shelley. Thank you for keeping your points very material and brief. Appreciate it. I think, whatever the government is doing, if you look at even the Swachh Bharat and the toilets sort of announcement which happened, the Prime Minister made, maybe I think it was 2015. At that time everybody wondered, like, what is this? Why toilet? Nobody really understood it. But now you see we are close to 75% of Indians have a toilet versus I think 40–50% at that time. And it's important that the focus on women was there in that, because we all know, even in the private sector, there are times where you don't have a women's toilet if you go to a site or in a remote part of the country, and how uncomfortable that is. So small things like this, the vision, the mission which we have, and as long as we have even in the G20, not the differentiation between engaging women versus women-led development, I think is pretty significant. And so we are grateful for a lot of the good steps, but we do recognize execution is key. Thank you for making that point. We have 5 minutes, and if the organizers are gracious, perhaps another 5 minutes, but let's make the most of 5 minutes. If you could just raise your hands, raise your hands and make your comments brief, and it should be a question and not comments, if I could please request that, so that we could get many more people to ask questions. I see you, introduce yourself, and anybody else, if you could show, okay? All right, so I see 2 women and 2 men, so we will go 1, 2, Jitendra, I see you, 3, and then the gentleman there, yes, you. Okay.
Good afternoon.
We'll come to you if you have time.
My question is, in spite of having confidence and courage, very few women get the chance to lead, to be at leadership position in green development. Then my question is, what skill set we need to have or develop so that we can put ourselves at leadership position in green development?
Sure, and who do you want to answer your question?
Ma'am, anyone.
Anyone?
Even you can answer it.
Okay, fine, sure, all right. But given that I've been speaking the most, maybe if I could request anybody from the panel, do you want to go, Dipankar? Okay.
Yeah, I think you are right that we don't reach to the leadership level, and those are which I pointed out, the requirement of skill sets, the required skill sets, and that is missing. If you talk about the rural and the suburban areas, the skill set is not there. So even after your degrees, I think today morning I was discussing, and you require some finishing schools to build up your skill set, so that wherever you are employed, they find you to be the best. There should be no disparities between genders. It should not be about gender issue. It should be the skill set that should decide your leadership. I think that is the way out.
I just want to, if I could, that's
Please.
great. Thanks, Dipankar. I think we should all treat life as a lifelong learning process. I see very often when we are recruiting, even if we, for example, let me look at a male professional, we are putting them in areas where they have no clue, they've never worked in that area, and yet we consider them for that position, because I think the one who's placing them believes that they'll be able to do it based on the values with which you work. Are you confident? Are you a problem solver? Can you get things done? It's as simple as that. We started a company in 2010, there were no experts in this area. And so we just took people who believed they could go out there, learn, and get things done. So it's my request of all the women here, just believe that you can get things done, look and seek for mentorship so that you can get the information, the opportunities, do research, and continuous learning. I mean, if you want to learn, say you're interested in, I don't know, green hydrogen, which you read about a lot, just go, read. There's so much of online education, but believe in yourself. Yes. Convince people that you can do it. Thank you. Jitendra.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all. So my name is Jitendra. I'm representing Renew. So my question is mixed to Dipankar and Purvi. So you both talked about agriculture and also women empowerment. What I was looking at is that access to finance
Capital,
is a challenge, but most of the microcredit institutions in India are not very successful. Then why? If it is a challenge, so they had been to the community, they are trying to help the women, and they are providing easy access so that they can start their enterprise. But even them, it is not very successful. Why it is so?
Pankar and Purvi. Purvi, why don't you go first?
Yeah, thank you. I think there are many reasons, but one of the key reason also is a lot of these credit and finance systems, they go to finance production or the pre-harvest part of agriculture value chain, and very little goes in the post-harvest part of value chain, which is the market access and price realization. And that's fundamentally why a lot of these channels have had problems. I would not completely agree with you in terms of it is not successful. I think it is successful in many cases, especially where there are aggregated forms of groups. Dipankar mentioned about self-help groups and the farmer producer organization and all that. We have enough data and evidences that when it is aggregated, it works. But you are right, in the non-aggregated form, it is a problem. And one last big point in that is, less than 10% of this country's land is owned by women. And therefore, that's one of the reasons also categorizing them as farmers and not just farm laborers. They end up working in their father's farm and then their husband's farm and their son's farm without owning that farm, right? And so that also, there is a mismatch of some of these services reaching them because of that.
Yeah, just to add on this, my actual field experience is that I don't agree to you regarding there are a lot of successful, self-help groups. But the issues are marketing, one, but the failures wherever has happened is because of, the lack of sincerity by the groups. It is not that, credits are available from the government, not from banks, through the banks. From the government through the banks, but they do it well, especially in the agriculture sector, in the animal husbandry sector, piggery. I have seen a lot of successful, even the having this poultry. But the failure is that insincere, and when they get, sometimes it happens, I'm talking about the field problems, they just, don't utilize the money for the purpose they have taken. So that is one of the reasons. When you get a government grant, probably, the mother will give it to the son to buy something. So I'm just sharing something that, but it happens in the field. But if they are sincere, the credit being shared by the self-help group, it works well. And there are many, many examples, and there are many videos that are available in the government, especially the livelihood missions of the states. They are working very well. And even if we have set up, multi-utility centers where we have solar powered, the value addition part is done there. Suppose, you do the drying part, or you do the, form the powder, the turmeric being, value added there. So all these are done, so it is successful. So I don't fully agree, but there are cases of failures.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take with, if I have permission, maybe 2 questions quickly, just the questions, and then we'll just field the answers from here. but you had a question, and you both of you could just present your questions to us, please.
So I'm Dr. Vanita, founder of Environment Consultancy, and working in the waste field as a woman leader, although I'm a scientist, but it's still very, very difficult to convince people that a woman can work in the waste field. So when we are talking about the girls who are, if we are talking about a woman who is illiterate, and we are saying that she has to develop the skill, and people like us who have almost, I think, you name the skill, we have it. But still it is very difficult in the waste domain to prove yourself. Okay. And in India, getting a small amount of grant like 30 lakhs or something is easier. But scaling up your business to a height at a global level, which we wanted to do, is much difficult. So how these gaps will be going to be filled in India, that's really required. And I think role model like us, who are taking a step, will fall back soon. How we can survive for a longer period of time if we really have to make a bend or make an impact. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question and the last question, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Nilav and I'm from TERI SAS, I'm a student. My question was specifically for Dipankar Saharia sir, because sir mentioned about Assam and how women of Northeast are working so much towards sustainability. I've studied in Shillong, and there's this small business called Weave, which is a women-led business, and they make hand-woven silk out of sustainable material. They use waste products like orange peels and everything. So the question is, why do you think, why is the product, why is a company like Weave still restricted to Northeast and still restricted to Meghalaya only? What kind of challenges does it face in the commercial space, sir? And why is it not found in the rest of the country? Why is it not available yet on online platforms? And what challenges does it face? Why is it not there in stalls of environmental summits like this? Why do they not reach?
Thank you.
Talk about the Eri silk.
Weave, it's a hand-woven silk.
Okay, so what I'll do is, Charlotte, may I request you to answer the first question, and perhaps Dipankar, the second one is directed to you.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, it's a good question, as that you can be super qualified and still struggle to move forwards, and there's obviously different circumstances whether you're talking about say, women in a rural environment and adoption, for example, of biogas, and in a more corporate arena. I think there's a huge amount to be done in terms of educating the senior leadership of companies. And women do need to work together to mentor and support each other and bring the challenges that they are facing to the senior leadership team to help them understand that the way, for example, a company might be set up. You mentioned lack of toilet facilities in companies. We've heard wonderful examples from women in biogas of some extraordinary experiences that they've had that are absolutely shocking. So all that we can do is keep highlighting those issues and make it clear that they are unacceptable. Make the case that there are many, many talented, skilled, experienced women who are not being brought forward and raised into the leadership team, and ensure that we keep looking at the statistics, which we carry out an annual survey to look at how many women there are in biogas alongside the mentorship program to show whether or not it is increasing, and hopefully it will increase. And also, just switching quickly to the rural context, really understanding how decisions are made around adoption of a biogas, a small-scale biogas household unit. The decisions are often very joint, and if you don't understand how decisions are made both to acquire the unit and then to operate it, then you may not get the right answer, but or may get it adopted. But and the Invisible Women book does have a brilliant example showing why it didn't get adopted well in some cases. But I also spoke to somebody yesterday, just very quickly, because it's a nice story, that it was an anecdotal example of when both the husband and the wife were consulted and involved in the decision-making process. The biogas cooking stove was adopted in the family, and the husband loved it so much he made his wife a cup of tea every morning. So we can get it right, and it also leads to happier couples.
Absolutely. Just one quick point, and absolutely, I just want to also urge all the women here, we look towards women for mentorship. That's critical, but let's realize it's less than 17, whether it's 17% or 13% women out there who are available for mentorship. You have the larger 80% plus men who are there for available for mentorship. I'd request the men to mentor more, and and for women to reach out to men as well, because that's where, unfortunately, the power is skewed, and we'll be able to accelerate our respective journeys faster. Dipankar, very quickly, and then I'll conclude. I know we are a little bit over time.
I'll answer your point. Just for information of everybody, that TERI silk is, it grows more or less in northeastern part of the country, because silk are more or less endemic to the particular area. So TERI grows well, and this is one of the best example of women-led, entrepreneurship. Everything, the plant, the worms for the silk are all grown, and everything is utilized, from the plant, leaf, and the worms, after it is being, used for the silk part, the rest of the thing is eaten by the, by the different people there. So every part is utilized, that is one thing. But TERI silk is very expensive. If you go and buy in Assam, you get very good TERI silk there. But the issue is about, the market access and value addition of, the new things that can happen. But as for your question, why it's not there, it should happen here, but it will not grow in any other part of the country. It may grow, but it may not grow that well. So, silk are most specific to the region. So that is what. But it has great scope to grow there in the northeast and market it outside.
Okay, thank you, Dipankar. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the panelists. Some brilliant points made. I think we've all gone back learning a little bit more about what we could do to accelerate this journey of a more inclusive, greener world, which we all are working towards. The best example is Vibha here at TERI, who's leading a green institution. Charlotte, many of us here are leaders. Hopefully, we inspire the young men here and the women here to do their bit as well. Thank you so much for this session. It was a pleasure moderating it. Thank you.
Thank you, audience, for your engaging questions. On behalf of TERI and WSDA Secretariat, we thank all the distinguished panelists and our moderator for their insightful discussion. We will now conclude this session. Thank you, respected speakers, and everyone who joined today's session. We will now begin with our next session, which is on MOU signing between Synergist and TERI. So I request all the delegates to kindly please stay seated. Thank you.